Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today for our Digital Trust Talks. I'm joined today with my friend and colleague, Tomas. And Tomas and I are going to spend a few minutes sort of sharing with you some of the things that we learned coming out of the PKI Consortium Post-Quantum Cryptography Conference recently held in Kuala Lumpur. How are you doing today, Tomas?
I'm great, Chris. Thanks
Awesome.
for asking, and great to join you here.
It's always a pleasure. And so, Tomas, just to start off, we had the pleasure of spending 3 days in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia recently with about 600 of our closest friends interested in PQC and another some 2,100 that joined online. I think this was probably the largest gathering of people interested in PKI and PQC, of course, hosted by the PKI Consortium. I first wanted to start with, do you mind, because you've been involved longer than I have, sort of giving us a quick overview of the PKI Consortium and why it exists and what its purpose is?
Absolutely. The PKI Consortium kind of was formed a couple of years ago, actually kind of retransformed from another consortium, but it started out with a couple of organizations committed to improve, create, and collaborate around PKI, around policies, procedures, standards, etc., to just promote PKI, which is both competitors, colleagues, a wide range. And while starting out with a few organizations, it has hundreds of members. So clearly the desire to drive this technology forward and use this technology to its according to best practices has been growing.
And it was fun because you and I have had the pleasure of attending all four conferences, and the first one started in Ottawa with I would say shy of 100 people, and over 4 years now has grown to 600 people, like I said, in person, and 2,100 plus online.
Yeah, we even had two conferences this year.
Yeah, we did. That's right. I keep forgetting we had Austin earlier in the year. So, I think this was a great opportunity to come together as a community. And I always find that one of the greatest values in these types of events is what did we take away from it? What is changing? What are we learning? For those who perhaps didn't have the pleasure of being in the room, or those who might have missed some sessions, as there's multiple rooms going at once, wanted to recap some of those takeaways. So I'll jump right into it, Tomas, and ask for your sort of highlights and key takeaways. What are the things that you walked into Kuala Lumpur not knowing and walked away from Kuala Lumpur knowing a little bit more of it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been doing this PQC stuff for a couple of years now, you could say, and it's been rising awareness. I even was in the region. Well, actually, I mean, the conference was in Kuala Lumpur, but it really attracted people from almost equal, amount from all over the world. So that just shows I think, the rising priority. Going there like just a year ago or a couple of years ago, there was more, interest to kind of judge the future, but not really high priority, top of mind. Or other things that were a higher priority. But you can really see how the priority of the post-quantum cryptography migration is becoming top priority for, well, I mean, driven by governments, but it's becoming kind of regulation. So it's becoming top priority for all organizations which are kind of affected, which are in critical infrastructure or any type of regulated industry, or even semi-regulated industry. So that's maybe my first takeaway, is how it has become from a interesting thing to top priority.
Yeah, and I'd agree with you there. And there's a presentation from the government of Malaysia in one of the I think it was one of the keynotes on the first day that outlined Malaysia's plans, an ongoing commitment to protect their sovereign nation against post-quantum or protected against a quantum computer and the impact on security moving forward. And interestingly enough, a few days before the conference, Singapore release some final guidance as well, and sort of have this avalanche of regulation coming at us, globally now, as to what the steps are that need to be taken to protect one against the emerging threat of quantum computing. And that was definitely one of my takeaways, is we continue to stand as a global concern, right? And that every country, every corner of the world, if you will, is looking at what the need is to protect themselves against an inevitable quantum computer that can break today's algorithm. So I think,
and maybe, interesting as well, there's no real outliers in this future regulation or coming regulation or present regulation. It's extremely, or maybe unprecedented, harmonized according, the timelines that different regions and different countries are taking in this. So it's kind of makes it easy for everyone, has the more or less the same goal in sight.
yeah, and I think that is a little surprising, because traditionally geographies somewhat compete, against different, shall we say, regional philosophies sometimes, and that gets lost. And in this particular case, there seems to be that, as you put it, that harmony of everyone moving together, and the acknowledgement that all of our systems are interconnected. Therefore, the ones that maybe go a little later and move to post-quantum cryptography are actually those that are probably going to be most vulnerable to everybody. It comes back to the weakest link in the chain. So it is interesting to see that level of global cooperation. I know you spent a bit more time in some of the technical sessions. I spent a bit more time in some of the more commercial sessions. What were your takeaways on the technology side? I think I saw some shifts on the other side, but I know you also saw some interesting developments, if you will, coming from the technology side.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that it's moving to actionable. So only a year ago as well, it was more planning and awareness, or planning what we could do. The standard has been out, or algorithm standards, or the first algorithm standards at least, have been out for more than a year now. But now we're really seeing, say, the real capabilities of migrating, which means everything from mature discovery and inventory tools to C-bombs being produced and consumed, to actual technical possible to do more or less out of the box for certain use cases, at least migration to post-quantum cryptography. And just a simple thing like we're coming from PKI, right? A year ago it was hard to do you couldn't basically do a production-ready PKI deployment because HSMs were not ready. But now, the ecosystem is getting, some parts of it are completed, other parts are just, on the cusp of being completed. So it's has really moved a lot technologically in the last couple of years. So there's really almost no excuse anymore to say that the technology isn't there to start.
Yeah, and I definitely observed a very similar trend, right? We're moving away from the technical conversation and the Q-day conversation, if you will, and organizations are actually putting in place their programs. One of the things that stuck out with me from the conference was one of the speakers mentioning that the migration to post-quantum is not a project; it's a program. It has no real end. It's an ongoing effort to keep the organization now resilient to new cybersecurity threats as it relates to cryptography. And I thought that was one of the insights I really appreciated. It may never be done. At least not from in 18 months time we're going to have this 100% complete. It is going to continue to be that iterative program. A lot of folks are looking at it obviously from a risk management basis now, which was another one of my big takeaways. Is there's some really practical advice from some of the speakers that were up there, customers, end user organizations. We had a great representation this time outside of the technology community from the banking community and government critical infrastructure, and they were sharing their plans and some of their early lessons learned, which shows that the shift is moving away from that debate about the technology. As a matter of fact, I read an article recently where the person said, "Hey, it's just assumed the technology is going to be there now," and I think that trend we definitely see, right? We see a lot more hardware, software implementations supporting PQC and the standards and so on and so forth. So it really now starts to come down to the program elements. I think one of the things, though, that I was also struck with, and I know you and I were chatting about this the other day, a lot of questions and comments and confusion and what ifs around hybrid versus composite certs versus this, that, and the other thing. A little bit of insight, if you could, on that would be interesting, because I'm not sure I necessarily walk away with more understanding of the right approach, but I did walk away with the fact that there's a lot of confusion around the approach.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to bring that up. There are still, while things are really moving fast along in the right direction, there are still gaps and confusion. I mean, there are some standards which are not really there yet, and along there, the industry has been, technology-wise, been very good at inventing multiple options to do migration to post-quantum cryptography. With different stopgap measures such as backwards compatible or non-backwards compatible, pure hybrid, multiple different hybrid approaches, and when organizations who are not organizations are trying to apply this in practice, it becomes, which route should I take? When it's not an easy question to answer. It really depends on specific use cases. So in some way we have kind of jointly created a lot of confusion. Maybe it's a good thing with a lot of options, but also with a lot of options gives hard time to decide which is the best option. And this, for some organizations, I believe this might, slow down migration more than needed, because it takes time to evaluate the different options and make the good choices. So I can, I have some opinions on myself, which approach is best for certain use cases, but I'm pretty sure I would also be say wrong in half of the use cases by stating them. So it's a tricky one.
And so your crystal ball is just as good as mine, is what you're saying. So yeah, and it was interesting too, because there are some standards around hybridization and things like that that've been around for a while. Others are still emerging, and so that's just adding even more confusion into the space of some things are standardized, some things are not, so on and so forth. And I walked away from that personally by saying, if you actually build the program correctly and you can become agile enough, making a mistake becomes a lot less scary. Or maybe it was the right decision initially, but over time the decision morphs to something else based on an operational parameter or a change in standards or whatever the case might be. So I think it sort of ties back to that. Why are we talking crypto agility at the same time we're talking around post-quantum? Because of all the known unknowns, really require you to become much more agile and much more resilient as a result. And that was another one of my takeaways.
I think you really hit the nail on that one. You don't want to go into this migration with, doing the same thing as you did 25 years ago, hard code one trust anchor and be all done with that. If you design your program more agile, you will have a lot of easier time going forward.
Indeed. So I think with that, we're coming up on time, Tomas. Your final thought or things that people need to take into account here as we wrap up.
I think conclusion from the conference was that the time to act is now, and we're quickly moving into 2026, where it's actually, which also means it's the year, well, that's my prediction, the year where practical migration will start to take place on larger scale.
I couldn't agree with you more. 2026 is going to be where people really have to put their theory into practice as it relates to what their organizations need to do. And to that end, I think a couple of just final closing notes, if I may. The PKI Consortium, obviously Keyfactor, and we personally are both big supporters of it. They actually have been working on some PQC readiness material available from their website. And if you want to be in the room live in person for the next one, I believe it's targeted for Germany next year. Dates still to be announced, but we are anticipating an even bigger crowd again, based on what we've seen as a trend and this continuing interest in this topic.
Absolutely, and go join the PKI Consortium.
Please do, and there's no cost to you. And as always, PKI Consortium welcomes sponsorship as well to keep itself healthy and alive and continue to offer these types of programs. So with that I think wraps up our digital trust talk for today. Tomas, always a pleasure. It was great to spend some time with you in person. We don't always end up on the same end of the globe, but look forward to the next opportunity we have.
Likewise.
Great.